Hi, friends. It is a big day here on Pondering Purple. You might hear that my voice sounds a little bit different. In part, that's because I'm using new technology, and the reason for that is that we're making a bit of a pivot this week. We made a pivot already a couple weeks ago when the content switched from being individual articles that I read. For the next few months, we're going to be actually doing audiobook content. The book I released in April called Pieces of Purple is going to be shared with you in 1 or 2 chapter increments, and that's what dropped a couple of weeks ago, the Prelude and Chapter 1. And then, and this is the new part, 2 weeks after each one of those episodes, I will be having a conversation with an adult TCK or with parents of TCKs about the topics covered in that or those chapters. And this is the day when we begin that phase of this pivot. And I am excited and I am nervous, and I've had to learn a whole new form of technology to be able to actually video our conversations. And so that's the information I want to give you before I get started with this conversation today. If you're a YouTube kind of person, if you would rather see something than just listen, you can go to YouTube and look for the playlist called Pieces of Purple. I will also, of course, link to it in the show's notes. And from there, when the chapters appear, you'll be able to hear the chapters just like you do on a podcast platform. There will be a graphic or two on the screen, but you won't see me actually reading the chapter. And then 2 weeks later, as these conversations drop, you will be able to see me and my guests speaking with each other. And I'm hoping that that makes things feel more personal and more relevant to you. And I can't wait to introduce you to some of my favorite people in the whole wide world. And one of them is my guest today. She's going to tell you a little bit more about her life, but I met Fiona back when she was a teenager. She was one of my students at Black Forest Academy, and we have kept in touch all of these years later, and now she has a house full of her own TCKs that she's raising. And I can't wait to talk about purpleness with her, about the wonderful and the hard, and I think you will end up loving her as much as I do. So keep listening on this platform if that's what you prefer, or you can stop now, head on over to YouTube with the link that I'm providing in the show notes, and you can actually see this conversation with me and Fiona. Thank you so much for joining us today. And here she is. And here we are. I told you that you'd meet Fiona, and Fiona is with us. I met Fiona how many years ago, Fee?
Probably 24. Oh, in 2002. Is that 23 years? I guess that's 23 years.
Neither you nor I have ever been very good at math.
I know.
So we'll let the mathematicians do the math for us.
Yeah, it's 23 years. This fall, 23 years right now.
Wow. And you were a student at Black Forest Academy at the time. How old were you when you started at BFA?
I came just before I turned 15, so I was heading into freshman year of high school.
The way you and I connected is that you were in my plays. In one play I directed and you co-directed with me, I think, right? Another play?
Yeah, sure did.
And then you sang in the choir. Yes, what was the one you co-directed?
Anne Frank.
Anne Frank. Oh, I love that play so much. But that's just one snippet of your life, and it's taken me 20 whatever years to learn the rest of your life. And as much as you're comfortable doing so, can you give us kind of a bullet point overview of where it began, where you are now, and really, because it's kind of exciting, what's in the future for you too that's related to this topic that we're talking about today? I'll give you the floor.
All righty. Yeah, you bet. So, hi, everyone. I was born and raised in Australia until I was age of 12. I knew from a very young age that we were heading overseas as missionaries. My dad felt the call to missions when I was about 3 years old, so I don't remember that moment. So my whole growing up years was just preparing to go overseas. And so when I turned 12, we headed to Russia, where my parents lived and worked. And while I was there in the city that we lived in, kids would come back on fall break and Christmas break from this place called BFA, Black Forest Academy. And so this was the early 2000s, and I was reading Harry Potter at this point. So all of a sudden, it just felt like this Christian Hogwarts where these kids were going off to that I longed to be at. And the doors just weren't open for me. And but then a few years into us living in Russia, God opened doors for me to go to Black Forest Academy. And so I moved there my freshman year of high school. I did all my high school.
How many years were you in Russia before you moved to Germany?
2.5.
2.5, okay.
Just 2.5, yeah. But my parents and my brothers stayed there. My brothers kept doing homeschooling. That was working for them, but it just wasn't working for me. And so I completed all 4 years of high school in Germany. That's where I met you. You would be our RA. I remember you making baked good for us, listening to all of our stories in the kitchen, sitting on the countertops while you were kneading bread or something.
Those were the sacred times, right? Those were the sacred times of sitting around that kitchen, just talking. And one of you would only be able to engage when we got to the deeper things if she was polishing the stainless steel. So I remember that one, just polishing things that did not need polishing, because that allowed her the distraction to engage on a deeper level.
Wow. I want to guess that was like Sun, Men, or Grace or something. I don't know.
I was trying to keep her name out of it, so we'll just leave that out.
Sounds good. So that was my high school years. And then at the end of my junior year there, I started to get to know a boy named Scott Custer. He was a senior. He was just graduating. And then after he graduated, we kept in contact. And he headed off to Florida to go to University of Tampa for his freshman year of college. I still had my senior year at BFA, but we were finding ourselves falling in love online. And we were like, what? We were just together for 3 years and now we have to be apart. But as God would have it, he kept our stories just getting closer and closer. And so Scott came to Australia with me after I graduated, where we got engaged and married at 19 years of age. So we've been married 18 and a half years now. And then we moved to Florida for him, or back to Florida for him to complete his undergrad. That's where we had our first child. And then we moved to Colorado where he got his MDiv, and we had 2 more kids. And then we moved to Hawaii where we are now. And we've been here for the past decade. And Scott has been pastoring a church here on island. And so I feel like my life has never stopped moving. Honestly, since I was born, I lived in 3 different states before we moved overseas to Russia. And so it's, I am very much a nomad. But this has been the longest place we've ever lived, has been almost a decade now.
Yeah. And can you give us an idea of the job that you're currently, the kind of work that you're currently engaged in? Because I think it's so fascinating.
Yeah. So as a kid, I always wanted to be an actress in Hollywood, and I didn't know how that was all going to work out. And every country or state we have lived in before Hawaii, there was never an opportunity to engage in the industry. But coming out here, we have a pretty hustling and bustling industry, or at least we had, and God opened doors about 3 years for me to begin to really take some major steps into the film industry. I thought it would be in front of the camera. I got myself a talent agent. I started auditioning for commercials and booking things. But God also wanted me to be behind the camera in the production office. And so now I am a production coordinator on commercials, and I work on feature films. I was able to work on live action Lilo and Stitch. And so I work with some of the biggest names in Hollywood, which is insane. After, thinking back to 10-year-old Fiona that just wanted to be an actress in Hollywood. Yes. And God has opened doors in ways that I didn't ever imagine possible, or in the work that I thought I'd be doing. But I love it. It's really awesome.
Yeah. So you've heard or listened to the first, the Prelude and the first chapter, right?
Yep.
So you know that we talk about purple and all of the cultures that get woven into the purple that we carry, the cultural purple that we carry. So you have several cultures in your life, as you've just outlined. And I would even say that for a lot of MKs who have been through a school like BFA, whether it's BFA or RVA or any of the TCK schools around the world, they consider that one of their cultures too. And I can see why. I consider that for myself, having also been to BFA as a student. So how do you see all of these cultures? Do they still show up in your life sometimes? And if so, how? Do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, I would say my Aussiness still remains in my accent. I don't know how it has remained this strong. And people who I meet, other Aussies or New Zealanders, and they're like, oh my gosh, your accent's so strong. And it's funny because it's when people ask me about it, it turns back on. Like my brain goes back into that door and is like, I'm here. And so it
Muscle
gets
memory.
It gets really strong when I'm thinking and talking about Australia, when I'm tired, when I'm angry, or when I'm talking to my family. But when I'm just existing in my normal life, it's a pretty hybrid accent. So I would say like the Aussie-ness of just the accent. I'm never going to separate myself from that. I would say living in Russia, hypervigilance that I've never been able to get away from. So I'm always, checking my fanny pack or backpack if I'm out in public.
So how did you experience that safety concern at that age?
I don't think I ever really felt safe.
Okay.
I remember the night that we landed, it was dark and we were being driven from the airport to this guest house where we would stay until we found a house. And it was just my mum and me in the back of this car with some missionaries, and God bless the missionary wife's heart. She thought she was doing the right thing, but she told my mum in the car with me sitting there, don't let Fiona go by the windows of the guest apartment, or don't let her go outside by herself. The neighbor is a convicted rapist.
Oh,
and
my
here I
goodness.
am, 12 years old, like driving, like, what? And so I remember just for all the weeks that we stayed in that guest house, I just slept at the end of my parents' bed, and that was welcome to Russia.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
and so there's I'll probably touch on more pieces of that, but so I'd say from the moment we landed in Russia, it was just hypervigilance. And it kind of stayed at that level until I got to BFA. BFA was the first place that I'd ever felt safe, truly, truly safe. So God did a huge healing in my years at BFA to bring kind of that hypervigilance down. But so the Russia with the hypervigilance, and then what's also Aussie is when I first moved to America with Scott when I was 19, we were in people's homes, and it was our first time kind of being adults, and we were buying different things and trying to make our house a home. And I would be at someone's house and I'd be like, oh my gosh, like that chair, oh, it's so cute. Where did you get it? How much was it? And they would tell me, and then I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's so cute. Where'd you get it? How much was it? And Scott was like, Fiona, you don't ask people in America how much things were. And I was like, wait, what? Like in Australia, that's what you do. Like you talk about money so much more easily and openly than in America. I'll never forget just that memory of being like, you can't be who you totally are here.
Yeah.
I don't know why that makes me want to cry. But as I was thinking and preparing for this episode, just that I've never, ever since leaving Australia as a 12-year-old, I never went back to Australia, really. I went back for that 1 year after grad. And so maybe if I had stayed living there, then I would have kind of become an Australian again and settled into maybe what is an Australian. But so quickly did I move to another culture once again and live in a different culture on the mainland for 8 years. And then we moved to Hawaii, which is a whole nother culture, for another 10 years. And so I've not stopped shape-shifting even into my adult years, which when I stop and think about it is kind of hard. But so the Australia piece with you asking for money, I knew I had to shut that down. And then I don't know what I have taken like from American mainland.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure, but then like the Hawaii life that we've been in here, it's slower, it's kinder. Nobody uses their horns here. It's so multicultural here, the blend of Asians, Polynesians.
Yes.
And so whenever I go back to the mainland and I'm around, this might sound bad, but like when I'm around a lot of white people, it's really weird because we haven't lived around that. Like my eyes when I see Asian people are at rest.
Yes.
And that's been
really
a weird thing to adjust to over the past decade, because I didn't live around stacks of Asians as a teenager and growing up.
You mentioned shape-shifting, which is a mixed bag. I think it's one of our greatest strengths, and I think it's why TCKs are so wanted in the marketplace, in the workplace. But it also carries, and the chapter talks about the wonderful and the hard, and sometimes the wonderful and the hard are connected to each other. It's the flip sides of a trait. So in what ways is shape-shifting something that you have used well for the good, that you've enjoyed using? And in what ways has shape-shifting maybe been a bit of a challenge as well?
I've always felt really drawn to like service industry type jobs. So whenever I was serving, I could be whoever my table needed to be in the moment, you know, and you're serving 20 different tables a night with so many different people. And so I really flourished in that role because I could be whoever they needed me to be in that moment. I was a birth doula for 9.5 years before I switched into the film industry. And that is such a bridge building, kind of shape shifting, serving role of who do I need to be for this family? Because every single couple that I served was so different in personality and in religion, in ethnicity. And so
and their expectations of what they wanted from you were different too, because of some of those factors. Yeah,
totally. And so because I'm so moldable, like I can be what you need me to be in that moment. And I think that also allows me to super thrive on a film set as well, because it is fast moving. It is so many personalities from all around the world coming together to create this, whether it's a commercial or a film, and it is tons of ethnicity, like nationalities on a film set. And so being able to connect to different ones, it's been interesting what God has called me to. He hasn't ever put me in a stagnant kind of job where I just have to be one thing every single day. He's allowed me to continue to just use every facet of my being, and which has been, I feel a real blessing, and I love.
I feel like it can be such connective tissue to other people.
100%.
And it's malleable. You can change what the tissue looks like and feels like depending on who it is that you're. But the flip side of that is then who am I? Right? So if somebody were to ask you, what is your primary culture? What would your answer be to that?
I literally don't think there is one.
That's right. Which is why we call it purple.
Yes. I believe I am a global citizen. Which, what I really struggle with is I don't know where I want my ashes scattered. I know that's
so relate.
That's so like out of left field maybe of like, wait, now you're talking about dying. But I wonder, where will I be laid to rest?
Well, I have
where
a solution.
Will I have a tombstone? There's nowhere.
My niece travels all the time, and I want her to just take my ashes with her everywhere she goes.
So
I
like
want the traveling ashes.
So like, what about like turning you into a piece of jewelry? That's what I think I want to do. Do you know that you can do that?
Yep.
You can turn yourself into a gemstone or a
we
necklace.
took a turn.
I know, but that's I am like
from doula to death in one fell swoop.
And there are death doulas as well. There is a doula for every stage of life.
That is right.
But I truly, there is nowhere, there is no real home on this earth anymore.
Yeah. And we're going to actually talk a lot more about that in future chapters of the book. So we've talked about a little bit already of the wonderful and the hard. What are some of the wonderfuls and the hards that you would like people to know about that they might be able to relate to? And how do we hold both, which I believe can be a unique TCK trait or strength, is the ability to hold both. If we're going to be whole people, I think we need to hold both and not just ignore one for the benefit of the other. How have you managed that?
The good that I feel in my relationship with God is seeing his ability to provide in absolutely creative ways all throughout my life. I have had to watch and I've gotten to watch him provide in so many intimate and massive ways. And so I know he cares about it all. And so I experience a walk with Christ that is living and breathing and moment by moment. And I think he cares about everything, and nothing is too small for his care. And so I just expect that in my relationship with him. I expect that he wants me to tell him about the minutia stuff. And so I do. So I just don't hold anything back. And so I feel like there's been this like beautiful, deep, just walk with God that I've been able to acquire. Because of that. There's obviously like the amazing perks of the traveling and seeing the world at such a young age. And Scott and I just got back from Europe, and, we're in our late 30s now, but we still have energy, we have health, and God has given us eyes to see the world at such a young age, and so many people have to wait their whole lives. And here we are able to see it all. Like, what a mercy. That's such a grace. And so it's this humble reminder, like, be present. And that is like the holding of the loss and the good is that they're going to weave in and out, and you have no idea what season you're about to enter or how long the amazing one that you're in right now has to go. And so just being completely, present and thankful for what is here, because no good or hard thing will last ever.
Yes.
Until our final breath. I have a tattoo on my wrist that says telos. And it's Greek for like that he will carry on to completion, the finish. Yes. And it just reminded me that no matter, if I was stuck in a really hard spot or even in the most fantastic moment, none of it lasts forever. And so we are staring down the barrel of deep loss in this coming year. And but I know that amazing joy and highs will also be on the other side of that loss eventually. Right. So just like really like just trying to, stay present and
holding both.
We
need to get our tattoos together because yours says telos and mine says be still. So I think be still and know that I am God, and telos kind of. They need to meet.
True.
I might have to add to mine. Yes. You mentioned what's coming up in the year ahead for you. Are you at liberty to just describe that for us now, and then I'll have a follow-up question?
Yeah. It's still a little bit fuzzy, so I can't give like major specifics, but we have let our church and our faith ohana know here that we will be finishing up our time in Hawaii beginning of next June. So we're at about 10 months left here on the gorgeous island of Oahu. And I just had my birthday yesterday, and someone reminded me, like, oh my gosh, I hope it's like the best last birthday. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like we've entered the lasts.
That's right.
And God made it clear that we would be leaving a year before we were going to be leaving, which was such a mercy, because now we have a year of lasts. We didn't miss any lasts, if that makes sense.
Oh, I love that.
So that's a gift for each and every family member. God has made it clear that we are to go from this country to a land he will show us. And we're not totally sure yet which land that is. We have inclinations. Yeah, we did a vision trip last week to Europe. Yeah. We're pretty sure it's there, but in the next like week and a half, 2 weeks, it should hopefully be a lot more clear. And and so my babies, who we have 4 daughters, the oldest is 15, and then I have an almost 12-year-old, an almost 11-year-old, and a 9.5-year-old. And like I said, we've been here a decade. This is all they've known. The oldest was 5.5 when she got here, and it was sad and hard when she left Colorado, but her heart was still little, like, it was still young. And so so they're about to lose everything familiar, even though they are already TCKs. I know that. And they're PKs, their dad is a pastor. But they already have an Australian mum, with a dad who was born and raised in Austria as a missionary kid, who has only lived in America 1 year longer than Aussie mum. And they've grown up in Hawaii, which is, like I told you, this predominantly Polynesian, Asian melting pot. And so for the majority of their childhoods, they've been the only kind of white kids in their class. So they know what it's like to be different. And they're potentially going to enter into even though it's cross-cultural, a more American world, which is kind of going to be weird, but good. So I think the being, the TCK-ness, that's going to continue to feel a little bit normal, but they've never experienced loss to the degree that they're about to. And so that's going to hurt.
Do you have any strategies that you're employing? Strategy sounds like such a cold word for what I'm talking about. How are you approaching this with your daughters to help them with the emotional transition, let alone the geographical and cultural transition?
We will be employing FaceTimes with Auntie Michelle.
Okay. I do not guarantee this kind of tech setup when we next talk.
I have started listening to some TCK books, and yours.
Good.
And to really, because I really do need to. This is my life that I'm entering back into, of being on the mission field again. So it feels like okay, this is normal. I know what I'm doing. Kind of. I've never been an adult missionary, quote unquote.
Yes.
But
I guarantee you it's a whole different ballgame.
Different. So there's parts that are going to be so new, but also feel pretty similar.
Yes.
And so I need to remember to not leave my kids behind.
Yes.
Because I could just, all right, and here's the next thing. Now we're living in Europe, and we're doing, and my babies are floundering, and so
and each of them is so different,
so
right?
different.
So to keep
and there's
tabs of how
girls.
each is doing.
Oh, yes, it feels daunting. Yes, so I am going to be relying heavily on my village.
Yes.
Because I know that I don't have all the answers. Yeah. And so I'm going to be encouraging them to talk to people and like, hey, you do not just need to talk to mum and dad. Like, this is a group effort. This is a team. So employing that, allowing them to feel whatever the heck they want to feel in that moment. Yeah. So our second daughter, she let me know she was not happy. And I said, okay, thanks for letting me know. Yeah. And I was like, that's fine. That's where you're at. That's fine. Yeah. And I'm like, babe, I'm not going to ask you to feel a certain way, like right now, or be excited. You can be mad. You can be sad. I was like, okay, do you want me to just like randomly come up and whisper like, you know, like, hey, is there anything you're excited about maybe? And then you can tell me something, even if it's just little, but then we'll go back to being like, yeah, but we're angry. We're leaving. Like, that's fine with me. You know, like. So,
how did she respond to that?
She was grateful for that. She was grateful for that. So so it doesn't scare, her anger doesn't scare me. None of their pain scares me. It's their story, and I just have to trust that God is going to work with it. Yes. And and I hope that she can look back and just be like, yeah, my mom never forced me to smile or act excited. Yes. And that's what I want. I don't want them to be anything that they're not.
And being able to, in that way, to communicate to them that God cares just as much about what he's calling you to as he does about the impact it's having on each girl individually. And that it matters to him that they're angry and that he wants to enter into whatever it is that they're processing. But I love that you, as a TCK, have been through similar challenges and you've come to the other side of it. And I presume that has equipped you with some wisdom that you wouldn't have had you not been in their shoes at one point.
Totally. I just have to trust. I have to trust he's going to work it out for his good. Yeah. And he's not just calling us or her to a life of misery.
Yes.
You know, and there's moments that I'm, such deep grief about leaving my community here. Crazy grief.
Yes.
But also then being like, because that story of, you know, the girl that has like fake pearls and she's like, I don't want, you know, don't take my fake pearls. And you don't know what is waiting on the other side, that God's like, I have these different pearls over here that I want to get. But I'm like, no, these are plenty good. Like, I'm so happy with these. Yes. Yeah. And something that I always had to tell my birthing mothers was, have your hands open. You know, when we clasp our hands in labor, you are stressing your body and you need to just be fully relaxed. And so keep them open, because good things can come in, bad things can leave. And that's just the posture that I have to keep doing when I want to do this and I want to hold on to the life that I know and I want to hold on to the security. And God's like, no, like, do you trust me to keep them open? Because that's vulnerable, because pain can come in, right?
That's right. Because the wonderful sometimes also includes
hard. Exactly. Because if they're closed, there's no more room for wonderful. So I'm also trusting that when my kids, I'm losing all of this and I'm like, I get it. And so am I, but we have to trust that God has different and still good in another place.
And if I can just point out, because I don't want anybody listening to this to think that you're saying, and I know you and I know you're not saying this, God called us and the kids are going to be fine. You're saying God called us and we're going to do everything we can to make this a healthy and helpful transition for these kids, starting now and for the next months and then after you arrive on the other shore. Because there are some parents who do say, well, we were called, so you're just going to have to deal with God on that one. But that's not what you're saying.
No. Yeah, forgive me if that's what it came across as. I just have to trust that God is going to provide what we need in those moments. He's going to provide the people for the conversations when we're hurting. And because I know that I'm not fully equipped to handle all of it. And so just as my heart feels vulnerable, my girls' hearts feel vulnerable, that he has someone for all of us to help us through and each other. We obviously... And himself, not just humans.
Yes. Okay, we've gone long because we haven't talked to each other for such a long time.
So long.
And they don't know how much we talked about really interesting things before we pressed record. So is there anything that we haven't talked about before I ask you the final question? Something that you, as you were listening to the chapter, thought, I think I'd like to say this about this. Anything we missed?
I'm not sure how to say this delicately.
That's my favorite kind of thing to say.
That the past that I had with living in Russia for the time and meeting people and knowing people and loving Russian souls and the current times being very, very jumbled when the word Russia is spoken. And so there's a part of me that when people ask me my story these days and I say that I've lived for a portion of my life in Russia, I feel like I have to qualify but I don't agree with what's going, there's this part of my history now that I feel a little bit uncomfortable sharing. And that's just surprising and hard because that was my life and I know people there.
Yes.
And so why do you I always cry when I'm talking to you, Michelle. You bring it out in all the people.
But you know what? That's something that I think is quite common depending on what your other cultures are, in that we somehow feel that we're shouldering the reputation of cultures that we didn't necessarily choose, that we were taken to, but that somehow we're responsible for what entire governments are doing in these places where we've lived. And there's got to be a way for us to release that. We have enough to carry that we don't need to be carrying politicians' decisions on our shoulders as well. But it's this instinctive thing. We're so responsible. It's one of our strengths is that we feel very responsible for things, even for our parents. That's how we end up trying to parent our parents sometimes. There's got to be something in the community, in parenting, in conversations like this one, where we can release each other from being bound by the downsides of places that are embedded in our purple.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is not releasing the place entirely, but remembering the good and calling out the bad. Not like it doesn't exist, not like only the good happened, but being able to really say, this is what it meant to me personally. This is what I loved about the people there and the experiences I had there. And I'm really troubled by what's going on this side of things as well. So again, it's looking for that wholeness without feeling like we have to go to the wonderful or to the hard. Yeah. And it's so hard. And we're still adults trying to figure this out, right?
Yeah. And I just feel as the world gets more and more confusing right now is what it's feeling. And so many of us are from or have lived in places that are jumbled up in confusing and hard and hurting places. And so parts of our stories are getting that was, And so for people, someone listening that there's a place in your past that is connected to hurt or even present where you're living, just working through that and figuring out how to not completely throw the baby out with the bathwater and to still be proud of my story and what God has done and where he's taken us. And, the world, I feel like, is becoming just a world of TCKs.
Yes.
The more we travel, the more multicultural this world is. I just feel like
Yeah.
you're talking about it. Like, I feel like this just needs to get into the mainstream, because
Yeah.
there's a ton of probably hurting and confused people not understanding, like, why do I feel the way I feel? And it's because like
Yes.
everyone's moving and we are becoming more global citizens, And so I just think the work you're doing and the conversations that you're having are so vital
Thanks,
for
Dee.
so many kids and adults. Because
For me too.
yes,
I'm preaching
and
to
for
myself
all
half
of
the
us,
time.
all of us.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so thank you for continuing in your legacy.
Yeah.
You have loved the TCK before.
People like you have made it
oh
easy.
my gosh. No, I appreciate you. And thank you for releasing this book. And
I think on what you were just talking about, we're really good at loving people who are complicated, and maybe we need to apply some of that theory to places that are complicated as well. So applying the same, I love this about this person, this is difficult, this we need a conversation about, this I can't change, applying that to the places in our purple and the cultures that are also as complicated as the humans who form places, right?
that is a good word. That is a good
Before
word.
we end, I'm going to have every one of our guests finish with one sentence, a word of encouragement or something that you would like to give whoever TCK or TCK parents are listening to this right now. Do you have something?
Yeah, I would say it ties back into what I just spoke about, of just the world becoming increasingly a world of TCKs, is those of us that know that you are one and that you can speak the language and you have coping mechanisms or resources. Don't be afraid to give those to people that don't know that they're TCKs, like be a Sherpa, be a TCK Sherpa, like help someone journey into the knowledge of who they are. Especially in a world of major immigration, that they're not going to totally understand maybe like what they're feeling and what's going on. And so I think those of us that know what this concept is, be on the lookout for those that be maybe stumbling and tripping and having no idea why. And so just to not be afraid to encourage and illuminate.
And we're kind of back to the topic of doula.
Be
the doula. Be the doula for people who are in transition and being cross-cultural and don't have the skill set that you have. Be the gentle, present person who knows a little bit more than they do and can help them over those hurdles. Yes.
That's the way.
Fiona, thank you. Thank you for being the first person here. We haven't had, as far as we know, we haven't had any major technical glitches. I might find out after I push stop. This is when I look down and realize, oh shoot, I forgot to push record. No, I did. We're good.
Awesome.
We're good.
Good job, babe.
Thank you. And I told everybody in the introduction that I taped before you came on, I told them how much they would love you, and you are everything that I thought you would be. I love looking back at your days at Black Forest Academy as this hyper emotional and dramatic teenager.
Have we moved beyond this, Michelle? I'm not quite sure we've moved.
Well, I have. But I love
so
that
many
I
tears.
get to know you as a mom and as a wife and now as a transitioner once again. And I love that the wisdom and the survival skills and the connection to God that you have developed through the wonderful and the hard is something that you're able to pass on as a life doula to the people who cross your path. So thank you for using it all for good.
Well, I love you, Michelle. Thank you for having me.
Okay. And thanks everybody for listening in on this first episode in this format. Remember to go over to YouTube and look for the playlist that's called Pieces of Purple, and you can follow us there so you don't miss any episodes. And if you are on one of the podcast platforms, it's just going to continue in this format, just the audio version. That's fine too. You're all welcome. And of course, we love to get comments. We love for you to share. Please feel free to share these as part of your community building together. Thank you so much for being with us today. Bye.